Path of Exile 2 has taken social media by storm and is arguably the most hyped game right now, reaching over 1 million viewers on Twitch. It's clearly one of the most anticipated games of the year, even attracting players who have never touched an ARPG before. And I happen to be one of those players. I've tried to play Path of Exile 1, and I also played other ARPGs like Last Epoch or Grim Dawn. But I never really stuck to these kinds of games for several reasons that I want to get into later. But just so you know, for now, I went into this game completely blind. I didn't watch any guides or streams, and I had no real understanding of the fundamentals of the game. I also happen to be one of those players that never really buy early access games because, well, more often than not, they are released in a buggy state with a lack of polish and content. And so my honest first impression of Path of Exile 2 is that they did a lot of things right in this game. There's a popular saying right now that Path of Exile 2 feels more like a Souls-like game than the traditional Exile experience players are familiar with. The gameplay focuses much more on extended boss fights rather than the fast-paced combat and high mobility that you typically see in the genre. And I absolutely love this direction. Everything feels mechanically different in POE2. You now have dodge rolls which are crucial for avoiding hits, and the combat is slower and more methodical. This means you have to strategically decide when to use your abilities and dodge at the right moments. There's been a lot of criticism on Reddit from players who aren't happy with the direction POE2 has taken. Many feel the bosses are too hard to kill, and they don't have the damage needed to make meaningful progress. And to be honest, I get where they're coming from. It's similar to loving a game like classic WoW and wanting an improved version of that formula only to end up with something like Cataclysm. I get it. If you loved playing POE1 and were hoping for a better version of its fast-paced and high mobility experience, then I completely understand why you may not enjoy POE2. However, one of the reasons I have always felt like I'm not the target audience for ARPGs is because I don't enjoy being able to constantly one-shot enemies so easily. I can look at this clip and immediately think about how boring that style looks to me. Sure, it might be fun for a minute or so, but I would personally get bored very quickly, because there's really no challenge here. You're winning simply because of speed or overwhelming power, and not necessarily because of skill, strategy, or patience. The reason why I think this approach for POE2 is so much better, not just from a personal perspective, but objectively speaking as well, is because it invites a different type of audience who might have never been into ARPGs before. You can visually see and understand what's happening on your screen, rather than being overwhelmed by thousands of different particle effects. The slower and deliberate gameplay also makes it easier for new players to get into the game. You have the time to learn how much damage each ability does, understand enemy mechanics, and adapt your strategy accordingly. On top of that, this methodical style rewards skill and decision making in ways that fast-paced ARPGs often don't. Every action you take matters. If you dodge too quickly, you might get punished for it, but if you strategically set up your abilities and combos, you are rewarded for your effort. I much prefer this slower paced and methodical type of gameplay, where defeating certain enemies requires patience and thinking. It creates a challenge and an opportunity to overcome adversity, making the game not just engaging but ultimately fun to play. I love the boss fights in this game. Like, holy moly. Before reaching Act 2, I faced this one boss that completely immersed me and kept me laser focused on the game.
And howled now in tune. No tales were told, none new.
It was such a tense, vicious, and engaging experience, unlike anything I have ever felt before in an ARPG. The music, the sound effects, the gameplay mechanics, everything was perfectly executed. It was also way more challenging than I expected. I have never really understood the gem system or how to make a proper build in PoE, so after dying a couple of times, I decided to upgrade my gear. I added some runes to my quarterstaff, and suddenly I started dealing way more damage, and eventually I managed to beat the boss. That fight made me realize how important equipment and loot are in this game. Again, I'm not an expert. Honestly, I have no idea what I was doing. But I guess I was just able to dodge mechanics and kept, attacking in between that made it easier for me to progress. But this does bring up some criticism others have made about the loot system in PoE2. If we go back to what I mentioned at the beginning of the video, one of the things I truly dislike about most ARPGs is the sheer amount of loot that drops. There's always an abundance of rare and unique items, and as a new player, it's overwhelming trying to figure out what to keep. I end up wasting more time than necessary just by managing my inventory. It also makes every unique or rare item less special, because, well, think about it. You're getting so much of the same loot that it doesn't feel as rewarding anymore. PoE2 does try to address this by limiting certain resources, like support gems or currencies, but I still found myself overwhelmed by the sheer amount of blue rare items that I picked up. Maybe I just got lucky with good drops, but I kept getting a ton of equipment and random high rarity items. And for someone that is new to the game, it takes time to figure out what to sell, what to equip, and what's actually valuable. And this leads to the common problem that I have with most ARPGs, and not just PoE2 specifically, which are the stat attributes for each item that you pick up. If I play a game like Classic WoW, I can understand very quickly by inspecting other players that a warrior should aim for strength and stamina. But when you play a game like POE2, you have so many different options that it can overwhelm you at times. As someone who is new to the game, I have no idea what to prioritize. This brings me to the build system and the talent tree in POE2, which can also be very overwhelming for someone who doesn't truly fully understand how it works. I often find myself asking, should I go this way or should I go that way? And ultimately, I end up making random decisions that don't feel like they're having any impact on my character. It would be really helpful to have a feature that guides you toward building a specific playstyle, rather than having to rely on external spreadsheets. It's also harder right now in the early game to have a trial and error approach, because refunding the points costs a lot of money, and so you end up questioning yourself whether you want to continue playing the same character or create a new one. So if you exclude the amount of times you get body blocked in the game, or the fact that it took me 5 hours to play it in the first place because the website was down and I couldn't link my account, most of the criticism that I have isn't specifically made for POE2, but more about the entire genre. I'm actually impressed to see a game come out in early access and have this level of polish to it. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I never play early access games because of the amount of bugs and unfinished content there is. But so far, it's been a great experience, and I'm just gonna say it, Path of Exile 2 did it right. Look, you can disagree or agree with my opinions all you want, but what I want to do on this channel is to continue making honest first impressions, regardless of how you feel about it. I would never do any sponsorships or any of that bullshit, alright? I just want to be honest with you guys and share my experience playing the early game. And so, I just hope that is something you guys can appreciate. Yeah, that's about it. I'm out.